Well, welcome everybody to Downtown Harbor Church. If it is your first time here, my name is John, lead pastor. Appreciate you guys coming on out. So today we are wrapping up this series that we're calling Elijah, where over the last 4 weeks we've been looking at this just amazing Old Testament prophet. So last week I told you that today we're going to see Elijah go through really what amounts to one of his toughest battles yet. Okay, and what we're going to see is that this man of God who loved God tremendously, who God used tremendously, really struggle with anxiety and exhaustion. We're going to see a guy who is burned out, and to use a very popular term, at least around my household, overstimulated. Okay? My guess is that many of you are going to be able to relate to what he's going through. Today, what I want to do is I want to look at what brought this guy who was firing on all cylinders spiritually to the end of his rope. And then more importantly, I want to see what God did to bring him back. To set the scene for today, I want to quickly recap Elijah's last 3 years because knowing what he's gone through really does give us a better perspective of what he's about to go through. So, in a matter of 3 years, think back all the way to week one, God sent Elijah to go confront the evil king Ahab about idolatry. Then he prophesied this drought. Then God sends Elijah into the Kerith ravine and miraculously takes care of him, right? Then Elijah miraculously brings a dead boy back to life. Then he goes head to head with the 850 false prophets of Baal. Then he calls down fire from heaven. Then he kills all 850 of those false prophets. And I didn't show you that part because it's a bit much for a mixed audience. We've got some kids in the room. So Elijah's a busy guy. He's been up to a lot. Now, directly following last week's story, Jezebel, who is Ahab's evil queen, and she's really the one who's been running the whole show behind the scenes this whole time. She finds out that Elijah has wiped out all of her prophets, which brings us to today. It says, so Jezebel sent this message to Elijah. May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you killed them. Now, before I show you how Elijah reacted to this message, I just want you to consider once again all that Elijah's been through. Okay, for the last 3 years, he has experienced the nonstop protection of God. God has been with him every step of the way from the first time he spoke to Ahab to last week when he prayed and saw that hand-sized cloud over the ocean. For the last 3 years, he has experienced the ever-present provision of God. In week one, we saw how God made sure that brook gave him the water he needed. God made sure those ravens brought him the food that he needed. When all that came to an end, God directed a widow to feed Elijah, and that food miraculously never ran out. And for the last 3 years, he's experienced the overwhelming power of God to raise people from the grave, to send fire down from heaven, to make rain stop for 3 years, and then to make it come back just like that. And then one single person, Jezebel, made a threat, sent a message. And as you're going to see today, Elijah fell apart. And I, for one, totally get it. It does not surprise me at all. You know why? Because James, the brother of Jesus, and we've looked at this every week, explicitly reminds us that Elijah was as human as we are. This man has been through a lot. And it's actually amazing how much the human body and the human mind can handle, right? I mean, think about your own life. You got family that criticizes you. Kids cause you problems. You're dealing with stress at work. You're feeling financial pressures. You get bad news from the doctor, and you handle it, okay? You handle it, and you handle it, and you handle it, and you handle it until one day it's one thing too many, and you can't handle it anymore. And you, like Elijah, fall apart. And the irony is that last straw, that thing that, sends you over the edge, it's always something so small, isn't it? It's like your belt loop getting stuck on a door handle, okay? Or, your husband once again asking you what's for dinner. Or it's like your kid refusing to put their shoes on. Just put your shoes on, okay? Oh, not shoes or sandals. Put them on, okay? Or maybe you're like my wife, who this week started to stab the ground beef with a fork in a blind rage because it hadn't defrosted in time for dinner. I was like, why don't we get a pizza? Okay, just think about all that Elijah's handled in the last 3 years. And then what was the final straw? Message, a threat. I mean, there's no evidence in scripture that she even did anything. I mean, there was even sent out soldiers. She just sent a message, and it was enough to make Elijah crumble, just as we do under one of Satan's greatest tools, fear. I no longer have what it takes. I can't handle this. I'm going to lose it. My life's out of control. I want to show you how this plays out in Elijah's story, and chances are you may see yourself in it as well. So after Jezebel makes this threat, it says that Elijah was afraid, and he fled for his life, and he went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. Continues. He sat down under a solitary broom tree, and he prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. I can't take it anymore, God. It is too much, God. I've handled all I can handle. I can't handle anymore. So, take my life. Take it. For I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died. Then he lay down and he slept under the broom tree. Depression, exhaustion, stress, overstimulation. I mean, how many of you can sympathize with this? You ever just, I don't know, sit in your car, in your driveway after work, just trying to muster the strength for your family? Or maybe, you're washing up after dinner and you're just holding back tears of exhaustion. And you're just thinking, I've had enough, Lord. I can't take it anymore. How did we get there? Chances are we made some of the same mistakes that Elijah made. And I want to show you just 3 of these mistakes, just 3 of them today. So the first mistake that Elijah made, and we do too, is we run ourselves into the ground. You just go and go and go and go and go and go and go. Let me show you how Elijah did this. So forget about all the stuff that he's done over the last 3 years. Just forget about that. Just focus on today's passage alone. In verse 3, it says this. Elijah was afraid and fled. He literally ran for his life. And he went to Beersheba, a town in Judah. So if you're reading this, which we are, and you have no concept of Middle Eastern geography, which we don't, then it's completely meaningless. Let me show you on a map exactly how far this man ran. So we know that he starts off in the Jezreel Valley, which mine has me at the Jezreel Valley Winery. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that says about my Google searches. Anyway, it's like 4 marathons. It is like running from Fort Lauderdale clear across to Naples. He literally ran himself into the ground, just like many of you do. Why? Well, because you want to be the perfect parent, right? You want to be the perfect spouse. You want to be there for your family. You got to make sure the kids are dressed and fed. You got to make sure the homework is done. You got a full-time job too, right? Yes, boss. Yes, boss. You got to make those deadlines. You got to pick your kids up at school. You got to get them to soccer. You got to get them to ballet. You got to get the dinner on the table. You got to get those chores done. You got to get the bills paid. You got to make sure your elderly parents are taken care of. You got to keep in touch with friends. What are we doing? Well, we're saying yes to everything and everyone, and we're neglecting our own needs. And we are running ourselves into the ground. And I get it. Because, you have real responsibilities. But the pace in which we're living is not sustainable. It's a problem. You're doing too much, and you know this. And your mental health, and perhaps even your physical health, is paying for it. So the first mistake that Elijah makes, and we do too, is we run ourselves into the ground. Second mistake we often make is we try to do it all on our own. We're like Atlas trying to hold up the whole world, our world, okay, on our own. And even though we are shaking under its weight, even though we feel like we're going to break at any moment, we often try to hide those struggles from those who are closest to us, right? From our spouses, from our families, from our friends, maybe even from our God. Just when we need to be reaching out to others, we pull inward. Elijah made the very same mistake. Let me show you what it says. It says he went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. So he's already run 100 miles. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling another day. This is where some of you are right now. You've run yourself into the ground. You've overcommitted. You're doing too much. You're barely holding it together, and yet you're trying to do it all alone. I don't know if it's like a pride thing. I don't know if it's fear, that's keeping you from asking for help. But here's what I do know. When you're alone, you're vulnerable to the enemy. When you withdraw from the people that God has placed in your life, you are absolutely opening up yourself up to danger. Because when you're alone is when we get sucked into Satan's mind games, right? It's when he starts to whisper into your ear. Don't tell anybody. If you open up, they're going to think you're a failure. If you open up, they're going to think you're a bad mom. If you open up, they're going to think you're a weak husband, a bad Christian. Listen, stress, anxiety, depression, burnout is not a sign of weakness. It is not a sign that you're a bad parent. It is not a sign that you're a bad husband or a bad wife. It is not a sign that you're just a loser kid. And it's certainly not a sign that you're a bad Christian. It's a sign that you are human. And we got to learn to recognize those signs and take control of what feels like an out of control situation and invite somebody else into your situation. Stop trying to do it all on your own. Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, according to scripture, says this: two are better off than one, because together they can work more effectively. And if one of them falls down, the other can help them. You need help. You know you need help. And God has placed helpers all around you. If you're married, okay, communicate this to your spouse. They are not a mind reader, especially if we're talking about men, all right? Your spouse might be able to read your face, but they're never going to be able to know what's going on in here unless you tell them. So open up, communicate it to them. If you're a kid, open up to your parents. Mom, Dad, I'm struggling. I need help. The Christian life was not meant to be lived alone. The Bible says we are better together. So what do? We run ourselves into the ground. We try to do it all alone. Last mistake that Elijah makes, and we all do as well, is we focus on the negative. You know, there may be a lot of good in our lives, got a lot of good stuff going on, but when you're stressed or anxious or burned out or overstimulated, all we tend to do is focus on the negative. That's exactly what Elijah did. He says this: I've had enough, Lord. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. First off, where'd that even come from? Why is he talking about his ancestors? Who asked him about his ancestors? But isn't this true? I mean, when you're stressed out and you're on the brink, then all of a sudden your mind starts to serve up these just negative thoughts and negative scenarios. Elijah, now at his wit's end, is looking to those who went before him, his ancestors. And he's like, I thought I'd do more. I thought I'd be better. He's looking at his current mental state and he's thinking, I shouldn't be like this. Psychologists will tell you the word shouldn't will destroy your mental health. They call it a judgment word. And it's one of the most destructive words that we can use. I shouldn't be like this. I shouldn't be so stressed. I shouldn't be so anxious. I shouldn't be so overwhelmed. I shouldn't be so depressed. It is one of the most harmful words that we can use, and yet we use it all the time. We focus on the negative, right? And we say, my life is so hard. I can never get it all done. I can never get a break. I can't stand these people. I can't stand my job. I don't like where I'm going. I'm never going to find a spouse. I'm always going to struggle financially. We flood our minds with such negativity that it's no wonder we feel awful. Scripture says that for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. We're doing nothing to help our situation. And we're doing everything to make it worse. So Elijah made 3 critical mistakes. He ran himself into the ground, tried to do life alone, and then he was focusing on the negative. And he was in a dark, dark place. And that's when God showed up. God came to him to minister to him. And my prayer is that he does the same for you today. So God shows up in the form of an angel. And in verse 5, we read this. All at once, an angel touched him and said, now let's pause here. Before I tell you what the angel said, let me tell you what the angel did not say. He did not say, well, if you had prayed more, you wouldn't be here. Because it's always super helpful when somebody blames us for our prayers. He didn't say, well, if you had more faith, you wouldn't be here. Because again, it's always super helpful when somebody kicks you when you're down. No, when God comes to minister to somebody in need, he doesn't come with judgment or condemnation. He comes with tenderness and mercy and help that is incredibly practical. When God sent that angel to minister to this man who was at the end of his rope, he said to him, "Get up and eat." In other words, you don't need to die, you just need a sandwich. And so Elijah looked around, and there aside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. And so he ate and drank, and he lay down again. He went back to sleep. Then the angel comes back a second time, and a second time he says, "Get up and eat." Do it again. "For the journey is too much for you," he says. In other words, you got to take care of yourself physically. You're run down, which tells me that sometimes one of the most spiritual things that we can actually do is rest. Think about this. Rest is so important to God that he actually made it one of the 10 commandments, the Sabbath. Now, what's interesting about the Sabbath, it is the only commandment that Christians no longer have to keep. Now we just get to keep it. But we don't, do we? And we pay dearly for it. Instead of resting, what do we tell ourselves? But we don't have time to rest. And we see somebody else resting, what do we say? Must be nice. Must be nice. Because we can't stop. That's what we tell ourselves. We're too important. That's what we tell ourselves. Right? We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to be here. We got to be there. We got to get it all done because, if we don't, it won't. Because once again, it's all on you. False guilt, that's what it is. False guilt is talking us out of doing the one thing that God suggests Elijah do when he was burned out, stressed out, depressed, and overstimulated. God says, rest. Rest. Slow down. You got to take care of yourself so that you can live the life that he's called you to live. So that you can live the life that you so desperately want to live. And so Elijah did as he always does. He obeyed God. And he ate. And he rested. And he was feeling restored. But God knew that Elijah needed more than just rest. He needed a fresh awareness of his presence, of God's presence. So after being physically restored through rest and proper nutrition, Elijah then travels for 40 days to Mount Horeb, which is actually where God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. And when he arrived at Mount Horeb, it says, the Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Pause for a second. The section that I'm about to read to you is arguably one of the most famous and one of the most beautiful passages in all the Bible. I, for one, absolutely love it. It says this: "And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper." God was not in these extraordinary events. God was in the ordinary. He was in a gentle whisper. And if you will just be still, slow down, you may hear God speak in the ordinary moments as well. Like when you're changing a diaper, or you're doing dishes, or you're driving to work, or you're walking into a meeting, or watching the sunrise, or hearing your child laugh. If you will just slow down, be still, you will sense God's presence in your life in a new, profound, and powerful way. God knew that Elijah needed the calming reassurance to know, I am here with you. I've always been here with you. And I'm so close that all I have to do is whisper. See, sometimes when we're at our lowest, God has to speak the softest. Scripture says that when Elijah heard it, that is, when he heard that gentle whisper, when he heard that still small voice, he wrapped his face in his cloak and he went out and he stood at the entrance of the cave. A man who was at the end of his rope, who was cowering away in a dark cave, was drawn out of the darkness by God's whisper. And if you are in the darkness of despair, whatever that might look like, you're burned out, stressed out, overstimulated, on the edge, listen for God's whisper. Allow Him to restore you as well. So, what's the practical? What do you do with a message like this? It's your first time here at Downtown Harbor Church. Every single week, we put this word on the screen because we want to make sure you can leave on a Sunday, know exactly what to do with what you've heard. So, if you're here today or you're watching online, or you're listening in the future, and you would say, I am burned out, or I am feeling depressed, or I am an anxious mess, or I'm overstimulated, I just can't handle anything more. I'm Elijah. I'm there. I get it. I'm there. I want to share a phrase with you that we've used before from this stage, and I heard it many, many years ago, and it impacted my life personally. So if you're here today and you would say that your mental health is not in a good place, whatever that might look like for you, okay? Just know it is okay to not be okay. You're a human being. You're not a bad person for feeling like a mess. If you're a Christian, you're not a bad Christian for being an anxious, overstimulated mess. You're not a failure. Our minds can only handle so much stress and pressure before it starts to give out and cry for help. So I just want you to take a deep breath and just know that it is absolutely okay to not be okay. But, and this is equally important, it's not okay to stay that way. See, Jesus says that He came to give you life and life to the fullest. And I'm going to guess that many of you don't feel like you're living. You feel like you're just trying to survive. You are white knuckling it through the day, only to collapse into your bed at night wondering, where did the old me go? How did I get like this? It's okay to not be okay. Not okay to stay that way. So here's my advice. I would challenge you. Ask that still small voice, that gentle whisper for guidance. And it's just, Lord, I'm exhausted. Or Lord, I'm scared. Or Lord, I'm depressed. Or Lord, I'm overstimulated, I'm stressed, and I'm crying out for help. What do I need to do, Lord? And if you listen, He may say to you, hey, you need to dial it back at work. Or you need to set up some healthy boundaries in your life with friends or family or coworkers or boss. You have to start saying no. He may say to you, you're trying to do too much on your own. You need to ask those around you for help. And you may say, well, I've asked them. Ask again. Tell them what you're going through. Or perhaps He might say, maybe it's time. Listen to me. Listen to me. Maybe it's time to see a doctor. I love what Jesus says in Matthew 11. I particularly love the Message translation of this. Jesus says this, are you tired? You worn out? Burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you will recover your life. You want your life back? You want to feel like the old you? How about this? What if you could feel like a better you? Then do what God says. Listen to God, that still small voice, that gentle whisper. Go to Him, and He will show you how to live. Let me pray for you.